fret leveling. Yeah, mystery. One of those things that not everybody gets a chance to do. People talk about wanting to do it, so let's talk about how it's done. But first, let's talk about why you might need this. And generally speaking, older guitars with a lot of fret wear will need to be cleaned up because they've just worn down in places. And see, if you level everything out again, you get a good playing surface without fret out or buzz. It's usually how I end up with a guitar coming in with somebody who knows they need some leveling, is they're getting some fret out or some extra buzzing. This is common. It happens. The other thing that happens a lot that most people don't realize is that brand new guitars also sometimes come with uneven frets. And whether it happens in the shipping of the guitar or it just wasn't finished off in the factory properly, hard to say, but it happens. So people say, hey, how could my guitar need fretwork? It's brand new. Well, it happens. Happens to the best of us. Happens on $5,000 guitars. Happens to $150 guitars. New, used, whatever. It's one of those things that just pops up from time to time. Even if something was plecked at the factory and suddenly you get it and look, oh, I got a couple tall frets. First thing you want to check is make sure that it isn't unseated, because leveling it if it's unseated is not such a great idea. You want to check and make sure they don't need to be tapped and reset or glued down. And that would be the first place to start. I've already evaluated this guitar. The frets are, has pretty much every kind of issue, shall we say, that you could possibly have. It has up here some fret wear, some divots from just being played, and or I think this guitar's neck had a little bit of a truss rod that was a little too tight, so these first couple frets got hit pretty hard. Or possibly the person who played it just mostly played open chords, which is possible, but it seemed like the neck adjustment was a little funky. It also just has some marks and scars from being stored in a very thin gig bag without any padding. So there's places where it looks like it took some bumps, and there's some places where the strings look like they just made some little dings and dents, so we can clean those up and make it proper. But this one also has a number of frets that are just tall, and so we want to knock those down and make them the same as everybody else. And the best way to check this is with one of these little guys. It's called a fret rocker. This one's from Stu Mac. Other people make them. If you buy guitars quite a bit, and or just are buying a couple here and there, this is a great thing to take with you, because you can, especially if you're Guitar Center or one of these other big places where they have more than one there, you can check and see if you're going to have to have some fretwork done on a brand new guitar or used guitar that you might be buying from a store. It's a great thing to check. Fretwork is not cheap. Another reason why it's a handy thing to know how to do for yourself. Anyway, it works pretty simple. It's just a seesaw idea. Fits over 3 frets, and you just run it along and find places that are not level, like right there and there. And then you see this one's pretty much all the way across tall. Sometimes it'll just be an end. Sometimes it'll just be one spot in the middle. Sometimes it'll be the whole fret. This one, like I said, has a little bit of everything. And so you just run down, check them, see this one's fine, 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 and then you get over here and it's a little wonky right there and all the way up to the end. So I have established that this needs some help. So that's what we're going to do. The next thing you want to do is make sure that it is stable. And I have a neck rest underneath here, And then down here, I have this extremely custom made neck rest that I've been using for probably more than 20 years now, and I use it pretty much every day. And it is 2 tennis balls taped together with some gaff tape, and almost everybody, especially if you have a dog or a tennis player in the house, you can scrounge up a couple tennis balls pretty easily and tape them together. But there's lots of stuff out there. The most important thing is to make sure that it's nice and stable and isn't going to flex underneath the work that you're going to do. If you're, depending on the technique that you're going to use to do this, if you're going to use a heavier bar, and that's one way to do it for sure, then you might want to get something under. I know if you're an avid hunter and make your own shotgun shells at home and you got a bag of buckshot laying around, that works pretty good. If you're a chef and have a bag of rice, something like that, that would work great. But just whatever you do, just make sure it's solid. Now, I don't have it completely braced in all the places because the way I'm going to do this, I use very little pressure. I mostly just let the tool do the work. And that tool for me today is this diamond cut steel, and sometimes called a stone, but sharpening steel, and it is just dead flat. It's heavy but not too heavy, and this one is coarse, and I have used almost every tool that made to level frets. This has become my favorite. It works great. It also kind of doubles as a fret rocker as you're going along. You can tip tap and feel the places where it's high and where it needs a little bit more massaging. It's not the only way. There are many ways to skin a cat, and whichever one works best for you is definitely the way that you want to do it. This is also one of those things that, you know, if you got to pick the kids up in an hour from a softball game, or you got a hot date in a little while, or whatever you might need to rush out the door to go and do, don't do this at that time unless you know you can comfortably just walk away. Lazy Sunday afternoon, take your time, make sure you're well rested and on your toes, and that you got your head together pretty good, and make sure that you have the time to just take your time, go slow, do it right, and usually that makes for a better job, and you won't have to come back and do it again to clean up where you may have left something behind. That's my 2 cents on that. So the other thing is it's all taped up and guarded, protecting the fingerboard. Very good idea. Mistakes happen, and you don't want to damage a guitar, especially if it isn't your own. Like, this is not mine. So I don't want to do any harm to it. I want to make sure that I take good care of it and it goes home in better shape, hopefully, than when it came. That's the whole idea. And if you're just starting out and learning to do this, you might not want to start with your prized Les Paul or Paul Reed Smith or your vintage Fender, something like that. This is one of those things where if, go on Craigslist, buy a $50 beater and, learn on that first. And you're almost guaranteed if you buy one of those to have some issues with the frets. It'll need some work, so it's a good place to start. That's what I did. I took, years ago when I first started doing this and wanted to learn, I took one of my guitars that wasn't very good quality, that needed some help, and I practiced on that. And that helped a lot, because I didn't feel like, oh my God, if I mess up, my R7 is going to be ruined forever and need help and all that fun stuff. So anyway, get a hoopty, practice on the hoopty, move on up as you feel comfortable and confident. Now I have lacquer tape on here. I do a lot of painting, so I have lacquer tape around. I don't really recommend it because it is expensive, so painter's tape or even just plain masking tape like this in the middle here. I have different sizes again because I do a lot of painting, so I need it. You can get away with one of the smaller sizes or a medium size, and then just use an X-Acto knife to cut it down to size that is good. But protect the fingerboard. It's smart. It's a good thing to do. So once you have the neck totally flat, which is what we have here, I've adjusted the truss rod so that it is as flat as it can possibly be. And to check that, I use one of these notch straight edges. And again, this one's a StuMac. There are others out there. Highly recommended if you're going to do this type of work to have one of these, because it tells you right where the neck is, and that's an important thing. So we've got that adjustment set to being nice and as flat as it'll possibly be. It's wood. Not every neck is going to go totally dead flat, so you want to get it as close as you possibly can. Again, nice bracing behind it. Once that's done, what you want to do is mark the top of the frets, which will act as a guide as you go down, and it will show you where the low spots are, which conversely shows you where the high spots are. I like a Sharpie. It works the best for me. If you have something else that you like, by all means, do what you're comfortable with, do what you like, but you just want to mark the tops of the frets, and I use the edge of it, and it works better for me this way. Purple or blue for me tends to stand up a little bit better. I can see it easier. That's just kind of where I've ended up, but anything will do. Black, orange, yellow, whatever. Probably have a Sharpie in your house somewhere, I bet. Anyway, so you just want to mark the tops, and it doesn't hurt to let them sit just a little bit, to let the ink dry just a touch before you start in on this. It does wipe off pretty quickly anyway, but if you let it dry a little bit, it stays just a little longer. And so there we go. This one's just about done, I think. The Sharpie, that is. So, again, there's many ways to do this. Some people use a long bar and go vertically. And then there are the blocks with the proper radiuses, and they do a pretty good job of cleaning it up. As I said, I'm going to use this sharpening stone. Also great for sharpening the knives in the kitchen, though I wouldn't use the coarse unless you really need some help there, but they make different grades of these, and having them all is not a terrible thing, but the coarse one works great for this particular job. And so I generally will start at one end and just work my way to the other, and I go in this way so as to keep the radius the same, and then I will just slowly work my way down to the other end. And then again, I come back quite frequently with the fret rocker and check spots until I'm comfortable that everybody's nice and level. So let's get after it. Again, I like this because too I can do it with one hand while I hold the neck a little bit to keep from wobbling around too much. And just let the weight of the steel do the work. I'm not pressing very hard at all. I'm just letting the coarse grit of the sharpening stone do the work for me. Not being too aggressive. I can feel that that guy right there is tall, and I can feel I can rock back and forth a little bit with just this. So again, just let the tool do the job. Don't kill yourself. And if you press too hard, a lot of times you can bend the neck out of shape, and that doesn't help the situation for accuracy. So we're just going to take our time. We're just going to cruise down this way. You can still see that that one there is running a little tall. And we'll try and get that guy blended in before I move too far along. But again, I take my time with this, and I take a little off at a time and go back and check where the problematic spots are. The ones that are just a little bit funky will get cleaned up pretty rapidly by this technique. You want to make sure you don't want to go at any angle. You don't want to get this guy caught like this. You want to keep it perfectly parallel with the neck itself and just work it slowly up and down. Take your time. Did I say that already once or twice? Take your time. Take your time, man. This is not one of those rush jobs you want to just knock out super fast, even though you might be wanting to do that. Trust me, I've been in places where I'm under time constraints, and I still try to just take it easy. You know, put it on an Old Eagles album, man. Take it easy. It's alright. It's going to be good. Take your time. It's like a fine wine. You know, let it age. So again, if just by touch, and because I've done this on hundreds of guitars, I can kind of tell where the rough spots are and where some of the tall spots are. And again, if I take this off, I don't know if the camera's picking it up or not, but you can see the ink is gone from this guy completely, but there's still some purple there, and there's still a little bit of purple here. So you know that this one's running tall, and we'll probably come back and work on that guy a little bit more specifically, but right now we're just going to try and get everybody down a little bit. Start off easy. Give everybody a nice little kiss. And, you know, then I'll come back with the fret rocker again. I'll check and see where the high spots are. And we may work on some certain spots and try and get everybody in line, as they say. Now again, I'm not pressing hard. I'm just slightly firm, but I'm not pushing hardly at all. I'm just letting the tool do the job. And I can feel this area right in here. We got a couple problems. And these frets have had a hard life. And this isn't an expensive guitar, so it's gonna just need that extra little bit of help. Although, like I said, new, old, used, out of the box, almost doesn't matter. Guitars end up with tall frets for a variety of reasons, and so it's just a matter of cleaning them up and figuring out, making sure that they're not just unseated and that they are tall for other reasons other than coming loose. And if they're loose, you want to tap them back in with the fret hammer, and or you may have to clamp them down and run some glue underneath it. Maybe we'll do that on another day. Possibly. Well, this came up as a topic of interest due to one of my old buddies who was interested in learning how to do this. And it kind of made me think, oh, you know, I could just... I'm sure there's a bazillion videos on how to do this out there, but if you wanted to see how I do it, I could just shoot a short video explaining my personal techniques. Again, everybody has their own way of doing things. If it gets the job done, then it's the right way to do it for you. That's all. It's a lot of personal preference, just like music and food. You know, not everybody loves coconut, and that's okay. All right, let's check our progress here. I can see that there are a couple spots. That is low. I can see that already, and we'll come back to that, but I can check if I go from either side of this, I'm guessing. Yeah, see. So that's where the ink comes in. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see there's a little purple left there. So we know that that's low, and it's low on both sides. And that isn't great, but it's okay. But some of these other problem spots weren't terrible, and I've seen already that most of them are now a thing of the past, which is good. So, yeah, problem spot here. I'll run the gamut. Now, if you have a little rock on your last fret, there's what is called fall away, where a lot of times you'll have the last fret in the line be a little lower, and which is fine because there's no frets behind it to buzz on. And if it's a little lower, then it won't be in the way of any of the other frets that are above it. So if this one is still rocking after you've kind of come through, don't freak out. It might just be a good little bit of fall away, and that's a good thing. So be happy about it instead of worrying about it. And in this case, there's still a little, that end is a little tall right there, so we'll clean that up. Otherwise, these have come back to being pretty level pretty quickly. Didn't take much. Again, with this fret rocker, you got to be real careful. You don't want to be at any kind of angles. You want to be nice and square, and you also want to check the whole length of the fret all the way across. And take your time. Find the spots, work them out. There, this one is still a little tall. And I'm going to just mark it so that I know which one it is. Because you think you'll remember, and then you don't. Because they all look alike, you know. Oh, it's a little funky. So these were really rough, and they have already gotten a whole heck of a lot better. And here's our problem area right here, which we can, so we're going to spend a little extra time working on that. The rest of these are looking pretty good. Check these guys. So okay, let's see if we can get these problem spots nailed out. Now, since I know we got a little bit of a problem here, I'm going to just turn this sideways and focus on this one spot for just a minute. Again, I'm not pressing hard. I'm just letting the tool do the job. And you don't want to go in one spot too long and you'll get too low. Get some flat spots, and then you always want to kind of come back and hit everybody again just to blend. Make sure you're not creating deep spots, which is just making more problems for you down the road, which you don't want. You want to come away with a nice clean playing surface. Nice and level, everybody happy. And make sure you're getting out to the ends of the frets too. It's easy to kind of sort of stay in, but just make sure you're getting the whole fret all the way across, all the time. Trick is to get the whole surface. You can focus on some problem spots here and there, but the biggest thing is you want to make everybody, I say buddy, like they're people, but all the frets all nice and even, level, uniform. And again, sometimes you can feel where the rough spots are and where you might have to spend a little more time. And you want to constantly check your work, especially if you're new to this and doing it new. Make a pass, come back, check. Make another pass, come back and check. It doesn't hurt to stop and check. And you also want to keep it clean. Like right now, I'm just going to wipe everybody. You can see, just to get rid of all the metal shavings. And I can see what appears to be maybe a couple little spots, so we'll check them. Also, while I'm doing this, as my hands get dirty, I will wash my hands several times during the process, especially when it comes to the sanding part. It's just one of the things that I do just to keep my hands clean, because inevitably you will touch other parts of the guitar and it will all get wiped down at the end anyway, but it just keeps you from mucking up other parts, and it takes 2 seconds to wash your hands, right? So not a big deal, but it just helps keeps everything clean, and it's just one of those practices I just kind of got into. And I'm not that OCD either. But as you can see by the clutter on my bench. But clean hands are good. Some people wear gloves even. I don't like the feel. I like to be able to feel with my fingers, and the gloves get in the way of that a little bit. It's just ever so slightly funky. So for some of the spots and stuff, I use a smaller file, same thing, just smaller. This one actually isn't coarse. I think it's a fine. No, actually, take it back. It is coarse. And for just little spots, smaller spots, I'll just use it instead. It's the same idea, same technique, same tool, just smaller. Like having more than one size screwdriver. Just allows me to kind of pinpoint and work on some areas. But again, I'm still trying to blend. I'm trying to do the whole thing, keep everybody nice and uniform while taking down the excess on the tall frets as needed. In this particular case, it looks like this one fret is just a little bit low. So I'm going to try and get all the frets around it down to that level without going too far. And again, I can sort of feel where the tall spots are. You can also get a feel of the smoothness as things start to come together. It drags less. And this one is also good at, again, it acts as a bit of a teeter-totter, so you can feel those little high spots and use it as your fret rocker. Alright, let's see how we did there. Yeah, there we go. Tidied that up. Let's see how we did through here. Oh, good. So much better. We had an issue there, but seems okay. It's just a little funky. And there we go. So just like that, and without taking any extra material off the frets, taking as little as possible, which is kind of my mantra on these, is that, you know, frets only have so much life, so let's just take a little off, a little off, a little off until we got it down just to the right area, and without taking too much. And then the frets will last as long as they possibly can using that technique. But if you play a lot, and if you've been playing a long time, you know that frets don't last forever. And that is one of the things on lesser expensive guitars. Oh, okay, no, false alarm. On less expensive guitars, one of the things that they do to save money is to use cheaper fret wire, which is just softer and wears faster, and in a lot of people's opinion doesn't sound as good. So, alright, well, so now we're leveled, and the next thing we're going to do is recrown these guys. And to do that, I'm going to use a crowning file. Again, just full disclosure, I'm not sponsored by StuMac or anybody else for that matter, and most of their tools are really great, and it is a good source, but there is other places out there and other tools out there. But I've had this for a good long time, and I have done hundreds of these with this, and it still works great. So the cost of admission is expensive, but it's one of those things where you sort of get what you pay for. And in this particular case, I am very happy with this purchase. And even though I grumbled when I had to fork out for the money for it, it has paid for itself over and over and over again. So it's a good tool. And it's also diamond encrusted file. This one has two sizes, medium on one side and more of a jumbo on the other. These are a little bit more on the fatter side, so I'm going to use the jumbo. And we didn't do any major work here that would cause serious crazy flat spots. That does happen from time to time. So this will be pretty quick to do, but it just takes the tops that have been flattened by the file and it crowns them again so that you'll get proper intonation and smoother play. And as I said, we didn't go hog wild on any of these frets as it didn't need it, so this will happen pretty quick. And I just run this guy across the tops of everybody. Again, everybody, my friends, the frets. Yeah, just run them across all the frets and clean them up. You might find little spots here and there that need a little more attention than others. You'll see a small fine line across the top when it comes together. I just like to make sure that it's all nice and round on all the frets, nice and clean. I like this also. This tool it has this area where I can just use the tip, or I can use the full length of it to get the job done. Again, I'm pressing harder doing this than I was when I was leveling, but not much. I just like to let the tool do the job, and we'll just go ahead and knock these out. Again, there's kind of a feel to it. After you get some experience, you sort of can feel when it's done. Some of them will need a little bit more love than the other ones. And you can kind of tell by feel when they come together. And some of them don't need much at all. But the ones where the tall spots were, where they were a little bit flatter, you can feel it grabbing in certain points. Just attention to pay close attention to the feel. And it's one of the reasons why I seldom use any sort of a power tool on a guitar. I like to turn screws by a screwdriver and turn nuts and bolts and everything by hand so I can feel what it's doing. Is it the fastest way to do it? No. But it makes me feel more comfortable, and I can snug things up just right without over tightening them. It takes longer. I think that's okay. I'd rather take my time and do it right. I'm not an assembly line with somebody looking over my shoulder telling me, you didn't do 37 guitars in the last hour. I'm just a one-man operation that tries to take his best care and do as good a job as I can for anybody and everybody who comes in here to have something done. And so quality, not quantity, has been my go-to sort of modus operandi. And I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. And when I'm rushing, I make more mistakes. So I've learned, especially as I've gotten a little bit older, I've learned to just slow down a little bit, let it take as long as it takes, and do the quality job. There's some old Italian guy at a vineyard right now going, yes, exactly, my friend. Take your time, do it right. But again, you should do what's comfortable for you. Find your own method. This is just how I do it. There's a million ways to skin a cat. As I said before, find the one that works for you. Specifically, though, my buddy was asking me how I did it, and so I was prompted to just go, well, we didn't really have time to show him at that moment, and so hopefully he can watch this and get an idea of my method to my madness. And if it helps anybody else, then that's bonus. But it's not rocket science. It's pretty easy to do. It's scary. Listen, when I first started playing guitar, I was, like most people, I was scared to turn the truss rod. You know, like, oh, it plays okay. Why change it? You know, why mess with it? But as time goes on, and I'm curious by nature, and I like fixing stuff, so I wanted to know how it was done. And back then there wasn't a whole lot of information out there. I think most of the people that came from my era learned mostly by doing. I will say the one piece of literature that I purchased that was an invaluable source of information was the Dan Earlywine book. If you're interested in this type of work, there is a lot more information easily and readily available. And in this day and age, people are like, books? What's a book? But I would recommend it. It's got some really great tips. There are some better methods to doing some of that stuff, but Dan's book has some really great basic stuff. If you want to learn some of the basics, there's some good stuff in there. And I'm betting you could probably find it out there used for not too much. I know I referred to it years ago when I was first starting out doing this type of stuff. I looked at it all the time, and it's impossible to absorb it all. At least it was impossible for me to absorb it all in one sitting. It was one of those things where I used little bits of it here and there as time went on, but I kept going back to it and finding it a very, very useful book. So thanks, Dan. Appreciate you, buddy, taking the time to put that book together and sharing your knowledge with us. And look at that. We've reached the end of the game here. All right. Again, I'm just cleaning them up. Sort of a habit I have. Wipe them down in between. Keep it clean as possible.